Critical thinking is one of the hottest topics in education these days. Now, you might think that using games to teach critical thinking would be a slam dunk, but it's not that easy, as ThinkFun co-founder Bill Ritchie found out when he brought his hit game Rush Hour into schools. I sat down with Bill to find out what he tried and what he learned from his experience. The answer might surprise you. Could you demonstrate Rush Hour?
Sure, no, absolutely. So with Rush Hour, there's a game grid. There are a collection of cards that are shown on the challenge card. And what we do is we place the vehicles according to what's shown on the challenge card.
Okay, purple,
green,
and then blue down there, okay.
Right. And so this matches up here. And then the idea is that you have to move the vehicles in order to get the red car with the tail fins to be able to go out the exit gate. If you just took this away, it could go right out. But you can't take it away, you have to move it away. And in this particular case, the way to do it is to start by moving the green, which unlocks the space to move the blue truck, which unlocks the space to move the purple truck, which unlocks the space to move the yellow truck, which allows the red car to move down some, but now it's blocked here, and now we have to reverse the entire process, back everything up. Once we back that up, open first space, and the red car can go out and make its escape.
Beautiful. I love the goal of getting a small number of moves because it really changes my experience. I go, yeah, I can solve it, but maybe there's a better route.
And you know, it's interesting because if you have normal difficulty challenges for Rush Hour and you ask people to do it in minimum moves, it can be frustrating. It's like, why would I, you know, it's like, okay, I did it in, 39 moves instead of 42 moves, or 42 moves instead of 39. And, who cares? Why would I even worry about that? But what that allowed us to do is to say, okay, well, let's find challenges that are as simple as possible, that have, as you say, this clever technique of you can solve it in 7 moves one way, but you can solve it in 6 moves if you see the breakthrough that the challenge has been specifically designed so that it can be solved in either 6 or 7, and the 6 is harder. And going through and culling and cultivating for, there's not a large number of these challenges, but there are enough, call it a couple of dozen, say, that are really clever and really simple as well. We started with that technique, and I would take those challenges onto an overhead projector or paper and pencil and go out into schools and start challenging kids to find the minimum moves of these real simple ones where it was so simple and obvious how to solve it. You just say, well, yeah, I move this, and then I get it out. And you say, no, well, anybody can do that. Now the challenge is minimum moves. And that became a much more compelling challenge because we had shrunk the form so small. And that became a very interesting thing. Part of the experiment that I was working on with that was to try and elicit from the kids, the students that we were working with, their actual thinking process.
Right.
Of like, okay, what was the breakthrough that you achieved to realize how to get it in 6 moves rather than 7 moves?
Right.
This was part of a larger project, going into schools and trying to use our games and puzzles as critical thinking resources. And then the question opens up, like, what is critical thinking? What are you trying to do with that? I was coming to work on those questions and try and figure it out. We did a whole program around this, and we decided that we would start with going back to George Polya's 1946 book called How to Solve It.
Yeah.
He has a concept for problem solving. It's a 4-step iterative process where you go through 4 things and then go back, and 4 things and go back. And it had made itself into the whole education system, and the educational researchers who were talking about problem solving referred to Polya, and this was...
Sure, that book's a classic. Anybody
yeah.
who's thinking about teaching problem solving is going to start from there.
That's right, yeah. And so we said, okay, well, that's the way everybody's talking about it, so that's the way to do it. So let's go in and apply Polya's method for getting kids to describe their thinking around how they solve the rush hour challenges. And so we went in and when we did this, and we got them to write down, journal their thinking, and the information started coming back, or the material started coming back to us, and it was like, I thought hard, and you go like, that's not very compelling or interesting. Or, I looked at the yellow piece and realized I needed to move. You know, these answers that were kind of not very. I mean, I was like, I thought our kids were kind of more smart than this or more insightful than this. It was interesting. I mean, we kept getting these things back and going, this is really funny how inarticulate they are. Then we got a phone call from a teacher who said, I just wanted to talk to you about this. And it was like, okay, sure, yeah, what are you thinking? He said, well, our students have been talking to me and asking if I could give you a call because they think that this question has no meaning and they want to understand what you're trying to get at because they have no clue of what you're even talking about. And it was like this light bulb went off where I realized that this Polya method that everybody was thinking about just wasn't applying here, and the kids actually weren't thinking that way. And it was a real kind of a breakthrough, and it caused a lot of subsequent changes in the way I think about critical thinking. It made me start realizing that I think a lot of the current policy is wrong about how kids actually think in critical thinking.
Did you then try something else?
Yeah, sure did. Yeah. So, you know, what we started realizing was that the way you actually solve the rush hour game, and one of the things I think that makes it so compelling, is you are, in fact, using a combination of your brain and your fingers.
Yes.
And so there's when you play, there's always open possibilities with the rush hour. You can try something, and if that doesn't work, then the board just continually keeps moving around. And you learn about the play pattern by just moving things as much as you do by observing the moving.
Right.
And you can go through a period where you're trying to solve the puzzle with rush hour, where you're just doing things and watching what's happening, and you're not really, you're just, you know, you try this and you try that and you try that, and there's nothing in your brain that says, now I need to stop and cogitate on this. You just keep doing it. And then slowly it emerges, you know, now I start to see a pattern, and you start solving it. That's the character of play with the particular rush hour puzzle. And we started realizing that each of our puzzles has its own character of play and that they're different. So we started pairing rush hour with, in particular, our chocolate fix game. And we had developed chocolate fix by that time as a logical deduction game that is much more sort of rational to play and is much more structured in terms of, let me put down this piece of information and that will give me new information that will allow me to put down the next one, and it will give me the observation to put down the next one. And it turns out that with chocolate fix, it's a much more verbal process of solving. You don't solve it, you don't necessarily talk when you solve it. But if we ask you what your thinking process was with that one, it's quite clear. You say, I start out with this clue, and that taught me this information. And so we were able then to go back into the schools and start talking with kids about more of a compare and contrast approach. Describe the difference in how you think with rush hour versus how you think with chocolate fix. And kids could respond to that, and they did. And it was really fascinating to see how kids lit up at kind of being able to articulate their thinking process across games rather than within a game.
So it's been great talking with you, and I look forward to seeing where we go next.
Me too.
Hey, innovator, wondering what innovation advice you should follow? It turns out that one size does not fit all. Take our Innovators Quiz and get your free customized cheat sheet packed with smart innovation tips that are tailored to you. Go to gamethinking.io/quiz to get started.